Hi, I'm Kayla Simon, and this is Kayla's Korner. Today we have a special guest, Amy Rowling. She is the Violence Prevention Health Educator at the Knox County Health Department, and she's here to discuss aspects of healthy versus unhealthy relationships. So I'll start off, what are signs of a healthy versus unhealthy relationship?
Well, in a healthy relationship, both people should feel an equal balance of power and control. Everyone should have a voice in the relationship and feel like they're being supported and heard, and there's compromise in there. They should also feel safe in the relationship, and that means emotionally safe and physically safe. And you should feel supported and heard, and it should be something that adds to your life and makes you happy. Sometimes when I ask students, like, how do you expect to feel in a healthy relationship? You know, they'll say, I feel happy, I feel loved, I feel like they really like me, and I feel safe, and that's really how it should feel. And if you feel like that isn't happening, or you feel scared a lot or nervous in a bad way, that could be a sign of an unhealthy relationship. And so I'm just going to talk about some of the red flags that we might see.
That would be great.
So sometimes you might see jealousy or possessiveness that comes in, and that might play out as like lots of texts and lots of calls, like where you at, where you at. And at first that might seem really awesome, like, oh, they really like me, and then it starts to get kind of disturbing, and it goes from being excited to see their text or call to kind of that not so safe feeling, like being nervous. They're going to be mad at me if I don't answer right now. And then it can move into isolation and control, where they want to have you all to themselves. They want to keep you from your friends and family, and that can kind of happen slowly. All of these things kind of happen over a period of time. Most relationships start out nice, and so we kind of have to pay attention if you start to see these things along the way. So they might try to keep you, like I said, from friends and family by maybe putting your friends down or your family members down. And then you think, well, maybe I shouldn't hang out with them. And then they get mad when you hang out with other people, and you feel like you might lose a relationship if you don't do what they want.
Right.
So and they might isolate themselves more and more, and then it can move into emotional or verbal abuse, where they're like putting you down and making you feel badly about yourself. And that's another tactic to gain control. And then it can move into more aggressive things like anger and intimidation. They might be starting to yell at you, and just if you try to leave or say you don't really like what's going on, they get really, really intense and angry, and it's scary, and so they think, well, I'll stay and I'll just try to be really good. And they're always in the mind of the person that this is happening to, they're thinking like, oh, I want it to be like it was in the beginning.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do everything I can, and they tell me, you know, if I just love them better, or if I'm just here for them more, it'll get better. So they keep trying to do that.
So they feel the blame.
Yes.
The victim does.
Yes, and that kind of ties into what we see with the cycle of abuse too, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But there's also like destruction of property that can happen. They can throw your phone, your cell phone, things that you care about to intimidate you. And then they can also move into physical violence, where they're hitting you or slapping you, and even in severe cases like choking somebody or something. And so it follows a pattern, like I mentioned earlier. And there's also something called the cycle of abuse that can occur, where it starts out the relationship, there's kind of a tension in the relationship, kind of that nervous feeling, but not in a good way. And you might be getting all those calls and texts and that controlled feeling. And then it can move into really kind of irrational fights, where they're like getting mad over nothing. And I'm just like, why are they mad at me again? Are they mad at me again? And the person's trying to keep everything peaceful. So they might change the way they dress, they might change what they do, they might quit their job, they might just think of anything that will make the other person happy. And still the fights keep happening. And then when the controlling person senses that they're losing the other person, they might then like start doing what we call the honeymoon stage. So we've gone through tension, you know, the explosion, and then the honeymoon is kind of like, how do I get them back? You know, and they promise they'll be better. They promise they won't do it again. They give them gifts, and they're really, you know, just great. And I'll work on it. And the person gets drawn in again, the other person. They're like, okay, they really mean it this time. And this happens, you know, over and over. And that cycle tends to speed up and get more dramatic and worse as time goes by.
If someone does find themselves in what might be an abusive relationship, what resources do they have here in Knoxville?
Well, we have the Family Justice Center, and that is, you know, young people can go there too and talk to an advocate. Anybody in a domestic violence situation can go talk to somebody, or a dating violence situation, and that number is 521-6336. And what they do is they talk to an advocate, and they can come up with a safety plan for how to handle the situation, and maybe get an order of protection if they need to. And also, it's just really sometimes hard for people to leave these relationships. And,
Right.
so it's really important for other people to be very supportive and not judgmental. You want to keep supporting that person and say, hey, I'm here if you need me. This kind of abuse lives in silence. So what that abuser is trying to do is make the other person really cut off.
Yeah.
And so if you can, as a friend or family member, just keep connected to them, keep supporting them, keep loving them, hopefully they'll know that they have other people they can turn to when they're ready to leave. It takes a little while. Be patient with them.
Why is it hard for people to leave these abusive relationships sometimes?
Oh, that's a really good question. They get kind of caught. They feel like they love the person,
Right.
and they remember how it was in the beginning, and so they're just like, oh, I want it to go back to the way it was, and they feel like they have some control. If they could just do what the other person wants, they could keep it. Sometimes there's financial control. Maybe they're living in the same household, or they're married, they have children, they've got financial enmeshments going on. So that can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
And there can be other just kind of like nervousness about maybe they've quit their job to make the other person happy. Maybe they don't know where the money is, so they don't even know how they're gonna move on. And maybe they don't have a car. They're worried about the kids.
Right.
There's so many reasons. And with teenagers, a lot of times it's just like they really just don't want to be without that person. They've gotten so used to it. And in that cycle, they get kind of almost addicted to each other. They just really get really intensely connected, and it's hard to let that go.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you so much for coming
Oh,
in,
you're
Amy. We
welcome.
appreciate it very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.